Shalom, Kahala Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem HaKadosh. Double honor to my teachers, the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who are the house of David reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about this short film called JIBARO that premiered in the third season of Love, Death, and Robots. It's a Netflix show which is basically a bunch of small, interesting, short films, kind of like Liquid TV on MTV back in the days, for Akim that are old enough to remember that show. Well, this particular episode was spiritual, okay? And when you go and you read the reviews, everybody harkens on to the whole Spaniard European exploitation of the Americas, right? Which is true, right? This doesn't exactly reflect any particular event that happened, but it is an analogy of what did happen, right? During what the world refers to as the Native American or the indigenous Americans, by the Spaniards, the Dutch, the Germans, the English, and so on, right? And but when you look at this on a deeper level, right, and you understand the truth of the Bible, you understand, you take what this show or this episode presented, and it actually has an even deeper meaning, right? And that's what I'm going to go into today. But before I get into my explanation of the spiritual breakdown of this episode, let's go ahead and read this. Now I'm going to let this play in the background while I read the scripture. This is Isaiah 10 and 14, right? Talking about how the Lord is going to punish not only the northern kingdom, who would be today referred to as the Latinos and Native Americans, right? But also the southern kingdom of Israel, known today as the so-called Negroes. Okay, now this ultimately is going to be focused on the northern kingdom's punishment and righteous, repayment by the Lord for what has happened to them. But let's go and read the scripture. This is Isaiah 10 and 11. Shall I not, as I have done unto Samaria and her idols, so do to Jerusalem and her idols? Right? So this is basically talking about, will the Lord not, punish the northern kingdom and destroy its idols, along with the southern kingdom, the so-called Negroes, with its idols, right? Remember, Samaria is another name for the northern kingdom, and Jerusalem would be we'd use it as a name for the southern kingdom. Verse 12, wherefore it shall come to pass that when the Lord hath performed his whole work upon Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, I will punish the fruit of the stout heart of the king of Assyria, and the glory of his high looks. Right now, this here is actually referring to the Edomites. Okay, the north or the modern day Assyrians. Okay, because again, it is under the American captivity, right? The Edomite captivity of us Israelites, that the Lord has now finished his works of punishing us. Okay, so when it says the king of Assyria, he's ultimately talking about these Edomites, right? The modern day Assyrians. Okay, now let's continue. Verse 13, for he said, by the strength of my hand I have done it, and by my wisdom, for I am prudent, and I have removed the bounds of the people, and have robbed their treasures, and I have put down the inhabitants like a valiant man. And my hand hath found as a nest the riches of the people, and as one gathereth eggs that are left, I have gathered all the earth. And there was none that moved the wing, or opened the mouth, or peeped. Shall the axe boast itself against him that heweth therewith? Or shall the saw magnify itself against him that shaketh it? As if the rod should shake itself against them that lift it up, or as if the staff should lift up itself, as if it were no wood. Therefore shall the Lord of hosts, send amongst his fat ones leanness, and under his glory he shall kindle a burning like the burning of a fire, and the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and his Holy One for a flame, and it shall burn and devour his thorns and briars in one day. Now this here ultimately is talking about the ultimate destruction of the Edomite Empire across the entire world. America, England, Germany, all of Europe that is controlled by the European power, or the Edomite power, excuse me, the Russians, the Australians, the New Zealanders, the Canadians, everywhere that the Caucasian race rules would be considered the Empire of Edom. Okay, now first and foremost, the main empire is here in America, which the Bible refers to as Babylon the Great. Now, back to this video, and let's go and break down what we're seeing. Right? And real quick, I want you to look at this video, right? 4 minutes and 41 seconds. Right? For those who know, you know what this means. Okay? Well, let's go ahead and get into what we're seeing here. Right? In this episode, you see what is referred to as a siren. Okay? A siren calling to these conquerors, right? These conquistadors. Okay? The people who have come to pillage the land, or the people. Okay? Now, remember when the Europeans, the Spaniards, and all these European countries, these Edomites, came to the Americas, it ultimately was by the will of the Lord. Right? The Lord himself said he would send a nation from across the world to come and destroy us as a punishment. Right? He did this first to the Northern Kingdom during the 1500s. Then he did it next to the Southern Kingdom, the so-called Negroes, during the 1600s, and then back again to the rest of the Northern Kingdom, and he took down the Indians in the 1700s. Okay. Now, in this analogy, you have this woman here, the siren, right? And notice the siren is heavily clothed in riches and fine jewels, right? This is an analogy of us as a people, the Northern Kingdom. While we were over here in the Americas, we had gathered onto us great riches, because again, you know, this is just what this land had. It was a fruitful land, right? In fact, it was so fruitful that the tribe of Ephraim, who we refer to today as the Puerto Ricans, their land was renamed Puerto Rico, right? Which means port of riches. Okay. Now we're gonna go ahead and read just a small little excerpt of what a man called Bartolome de las Casas describes the exploitation of the indigenous people in 1542. Now this man here was he was kind of like a monk, right? He was I think he was like a monk or something like that. But for the most part, he was responsible for writing the reports to the king to explain to them what was going on over here in the Americas. Now he ultimately exposed the travesties that were happening to us, and that ultimately was, again, the will of the Lord, so that way this could be kept for posterity, for us now at this time. So this way we could basically confront these devils with what they've done, which is what their fathers have done. Okay, this is why the scriptures say, you know, prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquities of the fathers, right? Because again, again, when you get into the Bible, reincarnation is true, right? It makes it very plain, right? And the Edomites, the people who have done this, they're back now, right? They're back now in their same lots. They're the governors, the mayors, the rulers of the world, okay? These are the Edomites who are in power till this day, okay? But let's go ahead and just read this account here, right? It says, the Spaniards first assaulted the innocent sheep, right? The innocent sheep here is referring to us Northern Kingdom, right? The Latinos and the Native Americans, okay? It says, so qualified by the Almighty, like most cruel tigers, wolves, and lions, hunger-starved, studying nothing for the space of 40 years after their first landing, but the massacre of these wretches, whom they have so inhumanly and barbarously butchered and harassed with several kinds of torments, never before known or heard, of which you shall have some account in the following discourse, that of 3 million of persons which lived in Hispaniola itself, there is at present but the inconsiderable remnant of scarce 300. Okay, Hispaniola is what basically they called Cuba back in the day, or I'm sorry, Puerto Rico. Okay. Now, what happened is, like he says here, man, there was about 3 million Ephraimites on this island, and then by the time they were done, after 40 years, there was only about 300 left. Okay, this is one of the reasons why the this is one of the secular reasons why the Southern Kingdom was taken into captivity, right? Because these people who had basically been harvesting the Americas needed additional cheap labor, right? Because they, for the most part, had killed us all off, right? To the point where they could no longer run their fields, grow the food that they needed to survive, and whatnot. So they went and sought for more slaves, and that's where the Southern Kingdom comes in. Okay, but again, that's another lesson. Right, let's get back to this. Nay, the Isle of Cuba. Oh, I'm sorry. Cuba is Hispaniola. It says, nay, the Isle of Cuba, which extends as far as Valladolid in Spain is distant from Rome, lies now uncultivated like a desert and entombed in its own ruins. You may also find that the Isles of St. James and Jamaica, both large and fruitful places, unpeopled and desolate. The Lucian Island on the north side, adjacent to Hispaniola and Cuba. Hispaniola is Puerto Rico. Cuba was just Cuba, right? So this is basically Ephraim and Manasseh, the two brothers who came from Joseph. Okay, this is their tribes. It says, which are 60 in number, and thereabouts, together with those vulgarly known by the name of the gigantic islands, and others, the most infertile whereof exceeds the royal garden of Seville in fruitfulness, a most healthful and pleasant climate, and is now laid waste and uninhabited. And whereas when the Spaniards first arrived here, about 500,000 men dwelt in it, they are now cut off, some by slaughter and others ravished away by force. Right, and this right here is talking about the slavery of the Taino Indian, right? Because again, a lot of Israelites today, right, they're all about black-only Israelites. They say that the Latinos don't match curses, but it's right here in history, man. It shows you that not only did they slaughter us and put us to the sword, but they also enslaved us, man. We went from the South Island, right here in the Americas, up to the Americas, right, up to modern day America, right, as slaves. And not only that, but they also took us back to Europe, into that port called Seville. If you look up Seville, Spain, it was one of the largest slave ports in Spain. Okay, continuing, and but it says, and the others ravished away by force and violence, to work in the mines of Hispaniola, which was destitute of native inhabitants, for a certain vessel sailing to the island, to the end that the harvest being over, some good Christian, moved with piety and pity, undertook this dangerous voyage to convert souls to Christianity. Right? See, this is how us native Indians, we became religious, right? We became Christian or Catholic, right? It's because these friars, these monks, these priests came over here, and like it said, through their piety and their pity, they thought that they were doing us a favor, but ultimately they were performing God's will by removing our heritage, as in accordance to Jeremiah 17:4, where we would lose our heritage. Well, how did that happen? Well, through the conquest and through being re-educated about what we should believe in, right? That being the false doctrine made by man, right? Known as religion, Catholicism, Christianity, and whatnot. It says the remaining gleanings is basically meaning the remaining part of harvest. The remaining gleaning might be gathered up. There were only found 11 persons, which I saw with my own eyes. There are other islands, 30 in number, and upwards bordering upon the Isle of St. James, totally unpeopled, all which are above 2,000 miles in length, and yet remain without inhabitants, native or people. Right? And it just shows you, man, how devastated the Americas were after these Edomites came through and basically destroyed this place, man. Right? I'm going to skip down because one part I just want to cover it right here. Right? It says, now the ultimate end and scope that incited the Spaniards to endeavor the extirpation and desolation of this people was gold only. Okay? You hear that? So now, when you see this siren, right, that's a representation of the Northern Kingdom that was down here. And as the siren is doing in this episode, she is alluring, she is tempting to these conquerors, right? She's calling to them, and that's basically what we were doing, right? When you read the accounts, additional accounts of people like the Casas and also Christopher Columbus, they make it very plain that when they first encountered us, that their thoughts were only their greed and the thoughts of how they would basically conquer us and subjugate us. Let's go and read about this now. Right? This is from Christopher Columbus. This is an excerpt from his captain's log in 1492. As soon as I arrived in the Indies, on the first island which I found, I took some of the natives by force in order that they might learn and might give me information of whatever there is in these parts. They do not bear arms and do not know them, for I showed them a sword, and they took it by the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance. They have no iron. Their spears are made of cane. They would make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. So you see, that was the mind of these devils, right? And again, they didn't just do this to just some random savages they found. No, they did this to the Israelites, to the apple of the Lord's eyes, right? Because you see, the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, believe it or not, are in fact the chosen people of the Bible. We are the Israelites. And it is now, in these end times, where the books have been opened to the firmament, the books are reopened, the Bible has been reopened and basically permitted to be relearned again by us. Again, the Lord had taken not only our identity away, but He took away our knowledge of who we were and what the Bible was about. Okay, but now that punishment is over, and now the Lord is returning onto us, our heritage. Okay, the Lord is returning, the heritage to His people, to 1/3 of His people, that is, right? Because again, 2 out of every 3 Negro, Latino, Native Americans aren't going to get this, and because of that, the Lord, they're going to ultimately perish in the destruction that's going to come. Now, that being said, let's just read this real quick, so that way you can see how the Bible even tells you where the 10 tribes went. This is second Ezra 13 and 40. Those are the 10 tribes. Right? The 10 tribes are the northern kingdom, the Latinos and Native Americans, which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hoshea, the king of whom Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. Right? This is when the Assyrians had taken the northern kingdom, us Latinos and Native Americans, away out of our land of northern Israel, that is, and they brought us as captives to the land of Assyria. Okay, but this is what happened after that. But they took this counsel amongst themselves. Right, this is what we northern kingdom Israelites, the Latinos, Native Americans, did after the Babylonians. Because we were in Assyria for about 100 years in captivity. Right. Then after that, the Babylonians came and destroyed their neighbors, the Assyrians. Right. And basically, at that point, we were, for the most part, free to go, right? We had, at this time, become merchants, and we weren't strictly slaves. There were still some in bondage, I'm sure, but for the most part, we had integrated into the society of the Assyrians. Okay, now this is what happened after the Babylonians came and conquered the Assyrians, right? In 41. But they took this counsel amongst themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes, and which they never kept in their own land. Right? And that's exactly what happened to us, native or northern kingdom Israelites, right? We ultimately decided to come to a new land, and that new land is what we call today the Americas, right? South America, right? And basically, we spread all over here. We were here for about 2,400 years before the Spaniards, the Europeans, the Edomites found us, right? And ultimately brought on the Lord's wrath upon us, right? And that's what you're seeing here, right? Not only were we alluring, were we captivated the Spaniards, the Europeans, the Vatican. Because remember, the Vatican is the one who decreed that the new lands can be taken as a booty, as a plundering, right? And as you're seeing in this video, man, these people who thought they were doing God's will, right? They were drunk with their lust for gold, right? And which is perfectly displayed here, right? And what we did when they came, we tried to resist, right? We tried to resist, and we even tried to become friends. But what happened is ultimately we couldn't withstand it, right? These devils, they took us down. But again, this was all the will of the Lord, right? We had no power in our hands to save our families, our wives, our children from the slaughter, right? There's depictions, there's depictions and also excerpts from journals telling you how these devils would basically kill in mass whole villages. The men, the older, the elderly, the children, the women who had just given birth, they would take our children and smash them, grab them by their legs and smash them against rocks, right? Others basically had relationships with these Spaniards, but ultimately, like you're seeing right now in this video, the Spaniards decided, to have their way with us, right? And you're going to see in just a bit, they basically stripped us of everything that they could, right? Like you're seeing here, they took all the gold. I think it was in a recent article, it said like the total amount of gold was like 180 tons of gold and like 16,000 tons of silver that were taken from the Americas, and it came out to like, I forgot, like something like 72. I don't know. It's like some immense number, like in the trillions of dollars that were taken, and when you count it as in today's money, what was taken from us. Well, again, this was ultimately the will of the Lord, right? And it was a harsh punishment, but it was deserved because we were going off as a people, right? This is Zechariah 1 and 15. I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease For I was but a little displeased, and they helped for the affliction. So even though the Lord brought these devils, these heathens against us, which the Bible makes it very clear that the nation of Eden, the wicked ones, are the sword of the Lord, right? He uses them to punish the world, right? They basically went above and beyond, right? They took it far beyond what they should have, right? So much so that the Lord is displeased with what they've done. And the thing is because of what they've done, the Lord is now basically throwing it in their face. And these devils, they're now ashamed of what they've done in the past, right? They try to say like, oh, I didn't do that, or that wasn't, I wasn't even alive then. This happened so many years ago, right? But here they are, these same devils, tell you that never forget 9/11, right? But when you talk about the captivity of the northern and southern kingdom, they're trying to tell us to get over it, right? That it happened so long ago, right? To integrate and to be American or whatever country that way. But again, that's not the way things work. And the Lord ultimately requires that which is past, right? And as you're seeing here, they don't actually show it in this video, but after this conqueror claims and basically rips off all the gold and possessions from this woman, right, which we could equate to the northern kingdom, right? What happens is, he dumps her body down the river. Right? He basically tries to bury her in the river. But ultimately what happens is massive amounts of blood spew from her body and basically, fill the entire river with what you're seeing here, right? A lake or a river full of blood, okay? Now that blood is basically an analogy for what I just read to you, right? All the excerpts, the history, the records of what these devils did to us, right? From the the northern kingdom all the way down to the southern kingdom. All these records were preserved, not because these devils wanted to show off. Well, at first it was, but ultimately it was so that way the Lord could use it as evidence against them for what they've done, right? And that's ultimately what happens here, because one thing I didn't mention in this episode, this conqueror here, as you see, let's go back, you're seeing all his friends. Let me see if I can show you. All his contemporaries, they're going crazy, right? Because the siren, the northern kingdom, is calling to them, right? But he's deaf, right? And he can't hear her voice, right? Hence, he doesn't fall to her spell, her allure, right? Unlike his other soul friends, okay? But what happens is after the river is filled with the blood of us, right, the northern kingdom, what happens is the blood, when he drinks it, it basically does something to him, right? He basically he starts to hear things, right? He's now starting to get a taste of his own medicine, I guess you could say, right? Which again, this is an analogy for the travesties and all the horrible things that these devils did to us, and that's ultimately what's going on today, right? These Edomites, which at one time were deaf to the plight of the Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, they're now getting an earful of what they did in the past, right? Like I said, this truth of the Bible is very offensive to the heathen, right? Because it puts out their shame. What does it say? That their glory shall be full of shame, right? Let's get that. It says, Habakkuk 2:16. Thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of Yahweh by Shem Shai's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. Right? And see, that's why this scripture came right to mind, man, when it says that drink thou also, right? Because you see, these devils, man, they used to revel in the fact that they conquered, us in such a harsh manner, man. They used to call it a manifest destiny, that they were able to come over here and conquer us so easily, right? We just finished reading the account of which De La Casa wrote down of what the Spaniards did to us, and also of Christopher Columbus, that American hero, right, which is being found to be a devil, right? Well, see, that's the shameful spewing that is now upon the glory of Edom, which was once considered their glory, is now considered shameful. So much so that they're taking down statues. They're no longer calling it Christopher Columbus Day. They're calling it Native Indian Day and all that type of stuff, right? See, this is what's happening to these devils, man. They are now starting to hear about the atrocities they're doing, and they're freaking out, just like this character in this episode did, man. He's now hearing the sounds, the records, the history of what had happened, and us here, the Northern Kingdom, just like the siren arose from the death, us Israelites, the Northern and the Southern Kingdom, the Latinos, Native Americans, we are raising out of our graves, as the Bible says we will, right? We're raising out of the place that these devils thought they buried us, right? And the blood that is upon their hands, we're using it as evidence against these devils and what they've done, right? And that's why you're seeing, like, and so that scene where you see this representation of the Northern Kingdom. Now she's able to destroy this conqueror who thought he had killed her off, right? She's now calling to him, and she ultimately destroys him, and that's ultimately what's going to happen to these Edomites, right? The so-called Caucasian race, is that because of what they've done, because they had furthered the affliction that the Lord had put them, to task, the Lord is ultimately going to cut these devils off, man. Let's read it. This is Obadiah 1:10. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. And it says here, thy brother Jacob, this is talking about us Israelites, because again, just as, basically Esau, right? He was a brother of Jacob, okay? And these Edomites, they are our brother nation, right? We were supposed to be close, but they broke the brotherly covenant by not only of what they've done in recent history, but all the way back when they burnt down the temple, when they helped the Babylonians destroy us. The Lord is going to destroy these Edomites. This is why they're preparing to fight him when he comes back. This is why they're doing what they're doing today, right? Preparing to kill off the Israelites, right? With all their agendas, their lockdowns and whatnot, man. You see? But again, this is just something I wanted to share with you, Akim. This video has been on my mind for a few days now. It's a crazy episode, man. If you have Netflix, or the means to watch it, again, the show is called Love, Death Plus Robots, right? This is the third season, and it's called JIBARO, right? It's a good, crazy episode, man. And again, if you're spiritually minded, you'll see all the spiritual, signs in this, man. It's crazy. Like, there's so many more things in this video that I'd love to break down, but I'm not gonna, keep on talking and wasting your time. I just want to give you brothers the highlights. All right. So with all that, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Kokodash. Love honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of the Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom. Trip out. It's 1:44 a.m. Shalom, Akim.